Hello everyone, I'm Tanya Lux and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Corel Painter. We're so lucky to have Jane Conner-ziser with us today because outside of being a painter master, she's also a photographer, a fine artist, a digital artist, and an educator, and she travels the world working on projects and also educating people how to use Painter. She's got over 19 years of experience in digital imaging, and she uses both Painter and Photoshop, and I'm assuming you'll probably show a little bit of that here today, Jane. And the special treat for us is that she's going to share some of her retouching and restoration techniques for the Saviano Painter restoration, which is, you see the original image right here. This is an extremely large format painting that went on a church ceiling in Italy, and Jane can explain it better than I can. So why don't I go ahead and turn it over to you, Jane, to get
All
started.
right. Okay. Well, thank you, Tanya, and welcome, everyone. I am in California today at Light Workshops, one of my favorite places to teach. Came in early and set up to be with y'all, and when I was invited to do this webinar, I was trying to think of something that I could do that would be different from the standard, turning your photo into a painting type of thing. And this particular image was such a wonderful challenge and such a great experience, and I've got a couple of others as well to share with you, but it shows some of the other things that you can do with Painter as it relates to photography and restoration and retouching. This image was almost 200 megabytes when we worked on it, and it was printed out as about 15 feet by 42 feet plus canvas. It was printed in Florence, Italy, so it was a massive file to work on, really stretching the parameters of the software. When I saw it, this is what all they had left of it. The painting had been damaged in reconstruction of the church, and Gabriele Piero had asked me if there's something I could do with it to restore it photographically. So what I did here is I first of all did a little bit of color corrections here on the curves, and you can see that is off color here somewhat, and I just kind of fiddled around with this a little bit, trying to get some of the red tones out of it. And then this would be a little bit adding just a hint of green and then some blues to it to get started. Honestly, I do some simple adjustments here in Painter. If there's an advanced adjustment that I need to make color-wise, then I will go ahead and do it in Photoshop. But even after the adjustments, and if you zoom in and look at this image here, you can see that there's quite a bit of blurriness to this. You can see that there's quite a bit of damage, and there's a lot of things that are missing. I mean, this was, when I was looking at this to try to think of it as a photographic restoration, I was like just kind of thinking, oh gosh, I don't know how this is really going to come out. And I knew they wanted a big image. At the time I thought it was 14 feet they were talking about, when in fact it was 14 meters, but I needed to learn to speak Italian better. So I thought, you know what, this is a painting to begin with. Why don't I just try to do it in Painter? And so I did start out like this. This is after the color adjustment that I did, the original one that I worked on here. And you can see that I mounted it on a canvas that was bigger, so that I could extend the top here. The only information I had for the top of the painting was that the cross would be completed here, and that the Holy Spirit would be represented in the form of a dove. So that's pretty much all I had to go on as far as this was concerned. And so I thought I would start kind of easy and just try to get rid of some of the grain structure that I saw throughout the image. No, I really didn't do anything fancy with this at all. I just tried to paint in the style of the original artist. And I started out just with the grainy water brush, and I just wanted to get about just some of the smoothness back into this, because paint is a continual tone medium, and literally I just kind of went all the way over this image with the grainy water brush to begin with. And any areas here that I didn't like the color on, I just kind of kept going over it like this. And when I got into the top portion of the painting, in order to extend it as a vertical, I just chose the colors that I saw here, and then choosing a large airbrush, I just kind of came in and just colored in some additional colors as it would come across the top of this image. So the clouds and everything were actually fairly easy to do. I just would come in and on the cloud areas just originally with the grainy water at 100% opacity because I did want to have complete detail in these strokes and moving around like this.
Jane,
Yes?
for some reason we are still seeing the original image with the color correction that you had pulled up.
Oh man, I've been working on this one for ever since we started.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, we're
Now you've
seeing.
seen it? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think it must have slipped off here. Okay,
Okay.
can you see my screen now?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, all right. Sorry, guys. I think we slipped out. Just
Okay.
imagine what I was doing now. Now, what I was doing here is I have the grainy water brush just at 100% opacity, and this is just going through the cloud area like this. And you can see that as I'm doing this, the clouds are starting to look cloudy. And the neater part about it is that when you get into this grainy area here, where you want to get rid of all these speckles, you know, a little blender brush like this is perfect for it. It doesn't really matter what kind of restoration you're doing. This type of blending will work out to get rid of all of that little dirt that you may see here and there. You know, I use it on other types of restorations as well. This is going at 100% opacity here so that I can get good brush strokes and come up with an oil painting type of look as was the original image. So you can see these little clouds are coming out here. And as I was saying at the top when you couldn't see me, you see from a distance, they look all a little cloudy. Perfect. And down here, all I did was take the digital airbrush and just choose the colors that I would see here. And using large airbrushes, just begin to build up some more clouds that I might see across the top, picking out colors from here and there in the image to extend this background color. When I get to the edge of the painting, I am going to choose a color that's right next to the edge of it. But then once I get beyond that, I can really select any of the other colors that I see in the background all the way across. And you know, the thing that you want to do on something like this is try not to be too definite up front. You know, here's the cross here, so I would just get a little smaller brush at this area here and just kind of extend it a little bit just to give me an idea of where it is going to be, and just kind of pull something out like this. And I can look at other things for reference that I see on the image here. Like right in here we have a piece of a cross in this this figure as well. So I can just kind of use that to kind of copy as I get further along here in the top part of this image. So that's pretty much what I did for the background part of it, and I will show you the kind of finishing area on that too. But then coming down here into the clothing, I started out again just with the grainy water brush at a very high opacity that would allow me to kind of sweep along here using the same strokes as the original artist. And I tried to keep this just as simple as possible. With my job, I didn't feel that my job here was to kind of create a fantasy, and a lot of my work is about creating fantasy, but in this one it was more about trying to figure out who this artist was and how they saw things. And you know, the style of paintings in Italy, depending upon the period of time and the development of the subjects, was based upon the general education of art that, you know, was evolving in Italy during the period of the Renaissance. And in going through the museums and everything, I could see that this particular style of facial painting was actually from around the 1300s, although this painting itself was painted in 1870, as I could see down here on the bottom of it. It was done by Cipro. It's down here on the bottom. There he goes. It's done by Spiro in 1910. I'm sorry, I thought it was 1870. It was done in 1910, but it was done in a style of a much earlier artist. And you can tell here in the front here that all of these people were probably people that were important in the church. So when I got down to the people here, so I got a little bit of the thing on the fabric and everything, and again it's just the grainy water that I used all over this entire image to try to work with this. And you can see that the reds that you see in the shadow areas were really difficult to get completely out. So as I was moving around and just kind of trying to contour and shape my strokes, according to the original strokes and shapes and of the objects that I was working on. So it's not really so much an original piece as a restoration of an original technique, that when I would get to this area here, I could make a new layer and change the blending mode to color, which would then allow me to use the airbrush and take some of the opposite color, maybe a deep cyan here, and I was able to kind of paint in some of these deeper cyans in the shadow areas that were coming up and being a little bit too red and magenta. A little bit of color here and there that would be coming in like that. And then simply reducing the layer's opacity to 0 and then bringing it back up again. You can see how it's beginning to neutralize in that area. And then in the layers window, I'm going to drop it back down, and going back to my little blender brush here, as I blend these colors back in, you'll see that they're not going to be that, that really bad magenta color that we're working on. So this is kind of like watching paint dry after a while, so I'll kind of quit on this one right now. But I literally did go over this entire image and everything and extend, and they also wanted a rectangle because it would be cheaper for them to frame. So I went over the entire image doing this, and it did take quite a lot of time building all of these pieces together in order to build an image that I could work on. So after this point, let me just kind of close these guys out here. We came into this one right here. I believe that this is the one I want to show you next. There we go. We came up here to, this is where I've come to on this, and you can see I've done quite a lot of work on the clouds, and yet not the people. I'm still at this stage going through this entire image. There's a lot of holes in it. As you can see, a little original grain here and there all the way around. And you've seen I'm avoiding little angels in the clouds, avoiding the subjects. I've extended the background. And up here was the dove. Okay, so what I did to make the dove is you can see the dove is on a separate layer here, and I've just done it for speed. But what I basically did is I looked at a lot of doves on the internet, many doves, and in taking this extra layer here, I'll just turn this right off. I just came up in here and I just began to paint the little dove's head in like this, and I had a little beak color that I wanted to put on him. So I had a little beak like that, and then a little gray tone for his body, little fat tummy on this side like that. Back into the white, I wanted to see his little wings come up like this, and some little feathers coming down from the sides. A little highlight on the tummy here, little tail coming out the bottom. So you can see that there's really nothing that's actually being painted. I'm just kind of giving some shape. And I wanted a little armpit here, a little armpit on this side as well, little tail feathers coming down. And I just started trying to build up something that looked a little bit like the dove. And actually this one looks a little bit closer to what I had. And then, of course, having done that, I need to zoom out here and check it for size and things like that. So I'm going to kind of keep working with this on the layer at this point, because it's important that when I'm working on it, that I have the leeway to make a lot of mistakes here, because I really don't know how I want this dove to look and how it's going to come into the clouds, and I want to be able to go back. And in fact, if you're really in doubt, you could make a copy of this, so you can always go back to the original drawing as well if you want to. But I think I'm going to be confident enough to just kind of go in here and give us a little dove here today.
Jane?
Yes.
I have a question that came in, and Craig is wondering, what tablet are you using? And if it's a Wacom, are you using the standard or the artist brush?
I am using the, actually I am using the Wacom Intuos 5, and which has got some great new touch technology on it, so you can zoom and tap and everything right on it, which I unfortunately turn off because I use my tablet in my lap, and as I'm leaning on it, all this stuff is happening on my screen. But it's got some great technology in it. I am using a standard, I use the classic pen. I do order a separate pen, and it's only because I have small hands, and the pen that ships with the tablets is a little bit wider. It has a rubber comfort grip at the front, and I prefer a little narrower pen, so I do order their classic pen for that. But that's a good question, because yeah, you're not going to do this kind of work with a mouse. Let's see how I'm blending this in, and this is making a little white mark here. This is a sign to me that I have not checked here to pick up underlying color. So I'm going to check this right now, because Painter will default to picking up that white, which is fine for me because I wanted these little white wings anyway. But now, as I'm doing the blending here, you can see that I can begin to turn my little paint that I had here into a little dove, and I'm just kind of sculpt it a little bit. Maybe I'll zoom in a little closer so you can see it a little bit better on your screens. But I just kind of drew where things was, and here's this little tummy, so I'm going to take the dark color and just kind of pull it over the sky, just like this, and push it to the other side, and I can take the white and go back and forth. This is still at 100% opacity, because I do want to see the brush strokes. So, you know, this entire painting was done probably almost 90% with the grainy water brush and the digital airbrush. And so it's like no special brush menus, nothing like that. It was just very, very simple. When I wanted a sharp edge on this, I can just come in a little bit higher. It's harder towards the edge, push down. It's going to give me my little dove's head like that. And then as these feathers come out, I'll just kind of pull my little feather out. So I think a lot of times when people are trying to paint something that isn't part of the original, like a tree or something like this, that we try too hard to make it real from the very beginning. And I try not to make anything real. I try to kind of let it become real as I paint with it. And coming down like this, the little wings are starting to come in. And the other thing that was real helpful on this part of it here was that I was able to incorporate the clouds into this as well. You know, when you're working on stuff like this, you take all the help you can get, right? So I've got my little, and see how the background cloud color, it just becomes part of the little dove's body. See, he's just kind of coming in here. How did that?
Did you alter the grainy water brush in any way?
All I did with the grainy water brush is I increased the opacity to 100%. It's, you know, I feel like I should be saying, yeah, I use all these special brushes and everything, and I really don't. I believe the magic is in the hands and the heart of the artist, and it's, you can make a painting out of just about any brush that you want to. Whoops, got a long beak today, and his little eyeballs got to be a little bit softer. Something like that. Now see, as we zoom out here, the other thing that I'll look at is we've got our little dove here. He's into our sky, but look at how the original artist painted these angels. And these were the ones I was kind of going by, because right here you can see that the original artist was trying to have the clouds come up with the faces of the angels, and he did a really good job on these ones over here. You can see here the cloud is a little bit not realistic in this area as well. But, you know, he's got all the angels coming out of the clouds. So I thought that with my little dove here, I would zoom out a little bit like this. And now I'm going to get a little bit a bigger brush, and I'm going to start thinking about these clouds. I'm going to start painting them here. I'll take this color, I'll make it just a little bit lighter, and I'm going to drop down to the canvas layer so that I can start building a little cloud underneath him here. Let's try it with the digital airbrush. Might be a better thing. There we go. A little bit bigger one. Got to start building our little cloud. It goes right behind. Notice that it's going right behind our dove because he's right behind our painting here. I think I've done a couple of things here. I'm not quite sure what I've done, but I'm sure it will all work out in the end. A little darkness here. kind of coming up.
You make this look so easy.
Well, it's I would say it is easy if you try to relax with it. You know, you just you try not to get overthinking it. And down here there was some turquoise I saw. See this pretty color in here in the turquoise color? I'm going to take some of this color here and make it more turquoise and bring in just a little bit of that blue color up in here as well, just to tie it in with the colors that I saw at the bottom. And then once again, we go back here to our little grainy water brush at 100% opacity, and we start building in, creating our little cloud. It looks like I've erased something in there somewhere, but we'll get it back. It's no problem. Yeah, it's just when you're starting working on paintings, it's always like you get to a point where you're wondering, you know, why did I even start to do this? It looks terrible. I always call it the dog meat stage. So you just have to kind of have confidence and keep working with it and try not to blend things too much, because you end up blending all of your colors out and getting what would be called mud. So you can see here we have, this is coming along. Got a little cloud coming behind him like this. And
I'm
now,
noticing, sorry, Jane. Oh, I was just going to say that you were on the canvas layer. I didn't know if that was your intention. Okay.
yes, I was painting what I could behind the dove, because
Okay.
I'm giving the dove someplace to be, okay? And see, here's something I've erased or something on the top here. I've got the background color I've blended up there. Is what I've done. So once I've gotten to that point and I've got a base for my dove to be, I'm going to go back up here to the dove layer, and I'm going to drop it. I'm going to say I'm confident enough here. I'm dropping this right now. And then with my little blender brush here, I'm going to go back in here and begin pulling the lighter color down. So see, if you think that something looks like a mistake, you know, it's probably not totally gone. This is just some color that I had pulled up from the underneath when I was blending, and now I just push the top color back down onto it like this, and it completely takes care of it. And then as I get just down here at the edges, I'm going to pull some of these clouds up just right over here, just over the bottoms of my little dove, like this. And he needs to smudge a little bit in here just so he can be a little bit more of a dream. And we have our little dove in the cloud. Okay? And so he kind of is coming out of the cloud like that. So let's see, what else should I be showing you here? The fabric techniques, I didn't do a whole lot on the fabric techniques for you, so I'll do a little bit on them now. I've got another image to show you too, so it's 924. In working with the fabric, I did try to keep his original plan here for the art. And what you want to remember when you're working on fabric is that whatever color you press down on is the color that's going to move. So if my brush is overlapping the edge between the light and dark, as I push down, it's going to blend those two together. You'll see it a lot better with a bigger brush. You see that kind of like, it kind of turns it into mush. But if I press down on the light, it'll give me that contrast between light and dark. And if I press on the dark, it'll give me the contrast between dark and light. So you want to have the right size brush to work with here. And I generally start with the shadows, and I'll start blending the shadows down a little bit, because it's easier to paint the highlights on top. So I'm going to come down this way like this, and this is going to get rid of all that really bad looking red and blue grittiness that I'm seeing in here, like that. Again at 100% opacity, coming down the other side as well, like this. And
How
then,
did they find out about you, Jane, for this project?
it was, I went to Italy. I made a deal with a photographer in town that I would trade him out some, like three days a week of my time for my room and board and fees. And so I was in this little suburb of Naples called Saviano, and everybody in town knew the photographer. And they started seeing some of my painting work and everything. And so Gabriele Piero, who lived down the street, also worked in the printing lab. It was a very small little place. And he came to me with this restoration because they couldn't do it themselves. They'd all tried it, but they couldn't do it. And so they asked if the Americani could do it. So I said and it was one of these things that they really liked. I made like no money off of this job at all, but they just loved this painting, and I just wanted to do it for them. I thought it would be a great challenge, and so I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And it turned into this really great thing. All right, so the fabric. Once you get the fabric done here, you can see that what we have here is we've got it blends it out real nicely. We've got the shadows here, but we don't have any highlights left. So once you're working on fabric, once you get the initial blend done, you've got to go back in here and choose the color that you see here, make it a little bit lighter, and then come in here and add some more depth to this painting where you want the highest, strongest highlights to be. And you want to follow the 5 lights of nature and put these in the right location here. And so once you get the highlights down, you could even, if you need more contrast, drop it down and add a little more depth into the shadows, whatever you need to do at this point. And the final step will then be to come back with the grainy water brush and blend these pieces in so that they become part of the original painting. So I'm going to close this one now and not save it, and I'll bring back up the final version of it here so you can see what I came up with. You'll notice right away I probably didn't do it in the same amount of time as our webinar here. But this is how it all came out at the end. You can see I have all the clouds around here at the bottom. I've gone through all the fabrics, recreating it. There's a little piece here that was going to be covered with the frame. See the faces and the little angels coming out of the cloud. How her drape came out in the end. I made her face. I didn't get quite the perfect likeness of her face, but I painted the halo around her, and I've got the crosses and the symbolism of her body posture the way that it should be. So, and when in doubt, hide it behind a cloud. I'm totally game for that. Here's my final little dove with the clouds behind it. And I really liked it because everyone in the church can have one of these now as well. These little guys here. And all the buildings.
We're getting comments that this is amazing.
It is amazing. It was an amazing thing to do. I just can't tell you. And the thing was, when it was finished, I thought it was going to be 14 feet. And let me see if I can pull up my my Facebook here. This is it on the ceiling of the church. And there's Gabriele Piero. And there's the little dove that I painted. Look how big it is. It's just amazing. And we were on this scaffolding that I swear that I was up there climbing up, and I thought to myself, I can't believe I'm 60 years old and climbing up here on this wobbly scaffolding that's held together with coat hangers with my little camera. But you can see that it's a long way down. And this is another one of the guys that installed it. Here's again the dove here. This is them working on it. They created a particular stretcher bar that they hung from the ceiling of the church in the plaster, that once they've stapled this on here, that they actually expanded the stretcher bars to hold it tight against the sky. That's the scaffolding. And one of the other paintings in the church. Here we are climbing up. And that's the final image up there.
Deb is...
Look, isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
It was amazing. This is their roller that they constructed. The canvas weighed more than me, and they had to have it printed in Florence because there was not a printer in Napoli that was capable of making anything this large. And there's a group. That's Gabriele Piero.
Do you have any tips for, Deb is wondering how you created the streaming light around the dove.
Ah, that is a trick. And there's the little angels. I wanted to tell you that as well. That is a special effect brush that I downloaded from Obsidian Dawn. And she makes these little custom brushes, and I love her little light beams. And I actually dropped that down onto the painting when it was completed. So that, and that's all, the name of it, I'll give you her name, I'll write it down. But you don't have to buy her brushes, but she does like to have credit. So I'll just pop this back down here. And her name, let me just get our little airbrush here. It would be Ob. Oh, it's a little too light, isn't it?
Did they varnish the image?
Yes.
They did? Okay.
Okay. That is, I do use some of her special effect brushes from now and then. She's got some nice little scroll work brushes that you can use for backgrounds and everything, but her light beams are particularly nice. And they're compatible with Photoshop, so I usually go back into Photoshop and apply them when the painting was finished. So, but that little light beam does make a big difference in it. You know, on the original, I saw that there was a semblance of a light beam, but this, you know, was just a special effect brush. I applied it to a layer, by the way. I applied it to a layer, and then using a layer mask, I erased it out of the areas that I didn't want it to cover. So that was an amazing project. So it's 9:32. So if there's no more questions on this one, I will show you a couple of other things that I do with this, a couple of recent paintings that I have done. This is a restoration that I was doing for a yoga institute, showing the yoga Amrit Desai doing postures for his yogi Babaji. And this was going to be part for a book. And zooming in to look at this up close, you can see that it's fallen apart quite a bit. It's gotten a lot of these little speckles, which is similar to the little speckles that you saw in the Saviano restoration. So once again, you can come in to Painter with this type of work and dropping the opacity of the brush down now, because this is going to be a photographic restoration. So I'm going to be maybe at 20%. I'm just going to very lightly, using a very light pressure with the graining water brush, just kind of mask some of this detail just in the areas where it's distracting, because this detail is only going to be visible in these black areas. You can see you don't see so much of that bit mapping and stuff that you in the highlights. It's only when you get into the darker areas and continual tone areas that you're seeing it. So coming in here with this at maybe 10-20% light pressure, you can come in and kind of erase some of the damage that you're seeing in this image. It just takes a few minutes. You know, restorations, I think I love doing restorations. I used to do archival restorations for museums, and I just love doing them. And you know, they're not a fast thing to do, but I loved the results of it. In fact, that's one of the reasons I got into digital imaging. Was I saw the technology, and I just pictured color restorations and black and white restorations, all the stuff that was really hard for us to do. I was able to picture being successful through technology. So you can see how this would work in those areas here, and then zooming out, you see it gives you a much smoother look without actually giving you a painted look to the areas that you need to mask out a little bit. And I was doing it close in so you could see what I was doing, but from a distance, it's a lot easier for you to know when to stop, because you don't want to go too far. You know, you don't want it to turn it into a painting, but you just want to mask the problems that you see in the image. Okay? So the other things are, and that when this is another one that I've just recently done with Larry Hirschberger. And this was a little watercolor here, very typical of what we would work with every day. And so the things that I'm looking at this up front is, number one, it needs a little bit of saturation, and number two is that, you know, the foot is being completely hidden. So, you know, part of what I try to do with my work is come up with a beautiful composition and a complete painting. So I saw that this had some problems for me. We'll do a little tonal control here, and then I'm going to bring the saturation up slightly on my image, just so that I can have a little less photographic colors to work with. And I'm going to punch it up a little bit high, like that. And so you can see here that the difference is pretty significant. You know, if your paintings do not look completely different from the photograph, there's no reason for people to spend more money on them. So you're always looking at ways of making things different and not just, you know, the way that they were. The final painting on this one, by the way, let me see if I can figure out where I put this. That's probably in here. This one. Okay, and that would be the final, would be this one. So you can see that what I've done here at the end is I've created a couple of special texture brushes to help me do the little weed painting in the background, just to give me some texture back there, but I kept it very watercolory and loose looking. And her little hair came out like this. And I added little special effects at the end where the seashells dumping sand. I put in some fairy dust. You can see I created a little foot, nothing too definite, moved the shell over. Okay, so that's the final on this one. But then when we get back into the one that we're working on here, you can see this is what we started with her little hand here and the sand. We had her little hair and the weeds that we have in the background. Okay, so to start with the foot here, I'm going to create a layer just because I'm not quite sure of how this is going to go yet. And I'm just going to choose the color that I see at the top of her leg. And I can see her toes sticking out here, so I'm just going to try to bring this together like this. And then as I move down the leg, I'll get a little bigger brush here. I'm just going to try to extend these colors down. And I choose frequently as I work down the leg so that I get a gradient tone all the way down, similar to what her natural leg has. Something like this. And you can do this to extend people's bodies, whatever you have to do with them. And I don't know where her toes are yet, so I'm just kind of coming down this way, and I'm trusting that they'll show up here someplace. Okay? They say, when in doubt, scream and shout, tear your hair and run about. No. So we just don't know. So this is her little leg as we have it right now. And I'm just going to paint over the shell here just so I can turn it into the little sand behind her feet. Down here. You know that at the end, too, we're going to hide this with a little bit of sand as well. So as I zoom out and look at it, you can see that her little foot is extending in a very natural manner. So then here with our little blender brush here, once again, it's the grainy water, probably at about 40% opacity. I'm just going to kind of blend this in slightly, and then I'm going to start thinking of where the toes are going to be. So I know she's going to have like a knuckle here, and then her little toe is going to come out. So I'm going to kind of come this way. And then going back to our little digital airbrush, I'm going to drop the size down to just maybe 2 pixels, 1 or 2 pixels. And I'm going to choose some of these darker colors that I see in her skin tones up here, either between her wrist area here or up here on the face, under the eye area. I'm going to pick something that's indicative of her skin tones and start out by kind of painting where I see the separation. Let me make it a little bit darker so you can see it here. And so here's where her big toe might come in here. So I'll just kind of pretend that that's there, and she's going to have 4 little toes beyond it. So I'll put a little toe here. 1, 2, 3. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little toes coming over. That would be all right. She's got 1 fat one on the end here so far, so we're not going to worry about that yet. And extend these out slightly. And then I'm going to draw in a little bit where I think maybe the toenail will be. So I'll choose the color here and make it significantly lighter. And so a little toenail here. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. A more opaque. All right. So kind of come in with the little toenails like this. Once again, I don't know where all these toes are. I'm just kind of pretending that I do. And maybe a little toenail bed here on them, slightly like that. And then looking at her fingers, do you see how the fingers here have got some highlights and shadows and different colors that you might see in there? You can even take these colors if you want. Like I might want that color and bring it onto the toe, and I'll put it on as a little highlight on the top part where I think that the sun might shine on the toe, right across the knuckle, maybe a little bit like that. The last little toe here. And then coming back over here to her fingers, I might take one of these little deeper red colors and come in and say, well, maybe she has a little bit of pink in the toes. That would be kind of cute to have, like this. Okay, and then I need to trim this last toe, so I'm going to take the sand here and kind of bring her little foot in a little bit more like that, so that she's got a little bit better. And around the front here as well, start trimming the toenails down just a little bit at a time using the colors of the sand. So once again, it still doesn't look like a foot. It kind of looks a little weird at this point, but we shall continue on trusting that everything is going to work out okay in the end. Little toenails. We had 100% opacity here, so I get brush strokes to start off with anyway. Blending it in like this. And bringing these two colors together. And if a color is too light, you can just go right over it again with a darker color and they'll be just fine. A little bit of shadow in here, like this. Toenails are a little bit big, but I'm just going to make a note of that right now because I don't want to, you try not to fix everything perfectly all the way along. You try to allow it to happen instead of making it happen. And then as you back up here, you can see that all of a sudden it's starting to look a little bit more like a toe. So with a slightly bigger brush and maybe about 30% opacity on our little blender, grainy water, I'm just going to start pulling these colors up like this, softening a little bit like that. And then you can go back and repeat the process until you get the little foot looking the way that you wanted it to look. In the end, you can always also hide a little bit. And if you notice on the one that I finished here, I went back, whoops, I drew a line right across her face. Went back here and you can see I added a little bit of the sand coming across here. This is just a little trick that artists use all the time just so that your artwork that you add to a photograph doesn't stand out like a sore thumb or a sore foot in this particular case. So we can go to our little airbrush at the end and we pick up this little color that we have for the sand, and I'll just bring up the sand a little bit here and there over top of her little foot, like that. And if it needs a shadow, I'll take this dark color here, a little smaller brush, take the dark color from around her eye area, and then just add a little bit of this edge shadow. Right
I
where
love
you
how
have it.
you keep things so simple and it's such a beautiful result.
I think it's important to keep it simple. You know, I think that particularly in something like this, I try to simplify it to the point where I'm getting feeling out of it. Like, see, there's a little foot there. Is that cute? And then right here, I think that it is the simplicity that really makes it pretty. You know, it's the things that you do to keep it watercolory looking. No, watercolor traditionally doesn't have a lot of detail in it, but it just has a little bit of fantasy. And you can see I drew up a few little weeds here and there. Oh, I'll show you my favorite weed thing that I like to do. It is so simple. You just take the digital airbrush and pick the color that you might like your little weeds to be here, and you just kind of come up and draw them. You know, just kind of come up like this, just float up a few little weeds and a little thing coming up like that. Just try to randomize them. Then the little thing is that you take the little digital impressionist brush here, and we're going to get like a little bloom on it. And you can come up like this. See? Just like that. And it gives you, and not too many blooms, just a little bit, and it gives you a beautiful little grassy thing that I really like a lot. So that was fun. And then over here you can see the handling with this. This was fairy dust. I love on these little watercolors with little girls in particular to put in fairy dust. Notice that I came around the bottom here and I put a little bit of lace on her dress. That's an easy thing to do as well. Just I made another layer for that, and I just started with white paint and the digital airbrush, and I'll just make a little bit more lace across the bottom here, and I'll show you. I just make a polka dot, and then a polka dot. Let me zoom in a little closer. You can see how they are? And then 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I just kind of go around like this and make a little lace trim. And then when I'm finished, you see how it's different colors here? What I did is I came up here to preserve the transparency of that layer, and then taking a little larger airbrush, I can come in and choose some of these colors that I see here, maybe to switch across it a couple of times so I can get a little darker color on this side, and maybe I might want a little more lilac on something. I can switch across like this and just kind of brush across it a couple of times, and you can see how that has given me the variation of tone that I see here that looks like the little lace is picking up shine from the sun. And then over here you see that I added some little lines and detail. I had painted the little buttons. The buttons were so easy. The buttons are just taking a base color for it, and you just make a little, oh, sorry, it might help to use this one. You make a, might help to use this brush on this layer. Oh, I'm preserving transparency, excuse me. Okay, and you make a little circle like this. Okay, so you have your little circle, and then you have to get a little lighter color and a little smaller brush here. And so we're going to make the little rim of the button and the rim of the button. Now we have a little deeper color that we made our little holes here for the button. And I used a deep color purple for the thread, a little smaller brush.
There's a question about, and I don't know if you can quickly show this because I know we only have a few minutes left, but how you created the edges on the painting.
The edges on the painting?
Mm-hmm. Just fading everything out as a
yeah. Well, what I do is I add a couple of inches to the size of the image so that I have, well, the edges, it's kind of from a beginning to end thing. So let me show you that. I'll bring this one back up again. Okay, so on this one here, generally I'll add a little bit to the sides of it, but if I start out by making a quick clone, and that's going to, that's it. Okay, so I've got this over here, and so when I'm using the cloner brush here, I'm only bringing in what I want to bring in. Okay, so let me just turn the tracing paper off here. So I'm going to get like a large brush. So I'll come in with this, and I'm only going to bring in the detail area around my little girl real strong, you know, because I want her in there for sure. And then once I get this on here, I've got a little light area around the outside edges, and then I'll take a larger brush size here, and as I'm bringing the colors out, I just kind of swoop in and out and bring in what I want to, and start fading it out at the edges. And the painter sees the canvas color as paint, so if I need to bring some light in, I can just pull from the side and bring in some light, and I can start building it like this. So basically that's how that little soft edge occurs. And let's see, it's this one. Okay. You can see that that's exactly how this one happened, that it just my computer's lagging a little bit. See how I can just pull them out exactly like you saw there. And where I want a little softer, then I, instead of doing the stroke, the line stroke, then I just do a little circle with a little bit of pressure, just kind of making little circles, like polishing your car, you know, just kind of something like this at the edge. And over here, you see I've got a little hard line here. I might pull this out a little bit so I don't have an edge. That's where the photograph was. I'll pull it out and then circle the edge a little bit like this. So, you know, painting is a lot like dancing. It can the paint can only follow the way that your hand moves, so that if you don't like the way that your paint looks, you want to move your hand in another direction. This is a little, could use a little softening right there, but little odds and ends.
Well, this was so interesting and inspirational for me. I need to pick my paintbrush back up and use some of your techniques.
Well, the only thing I would say is just, you know, loosen up and have fun with it, and, you know that you can't really make any terrible mistakes, and, you know, that it's, you can always go back and change it or clone back in or something like that, and just have a lot of fun. The simple brushes are fine. This one was all done with the digital airbrush, the grainy water, and the hair was done with the palette knife, Tiny Smeary. And that's makes beautiful hair for this style of painting, and it's just it's simple to do. You know, try not to overcomplicate it. It's fun. And focus on making those paintings look different than the original photograph, so people will want to spend more money to get them.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. And if anybody has a question, if you want to contact me directly, please feel free to email me. My website is janeconner-ziser.com. And if you guys would like to check out the Saviano painting there as well, you can see it there, and you can also purchase it if you want a copy of it.